The General Assembly of Pennsylvania, House Resolution number 861, Session of 2012, introduced by V. Brown, Bishop, Brennan, Cotagaron, DeGirolamo, Kirkland, Parker, Cutler, M. O'Brien, Stayback, and Frankel, September 25th, 2012. Introduced as non-controversial resolution under Rule 35, September 25th, 2012. A resolution congratulating and recognizing Pennsylvania's American Indian peoples and communities, and recognizing the first Saturday in October of every year as Indigenous Peoples Day in Pennsylvania. Whereas the indigenous peoples of North America, the first Americans, have woven rich and diverse threads into the tapestry of the heritage and the history of the United States and this Commonwealth. Throughout their history in this great land, they have faced moments of triumph and tragedy alike. And whereas American Indians have inhabited the land which is now known as Pennsylvania, dating back some 5,000 years. And whereas former Secretary of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, Dr. George P. Dunhu, acknowledged that no state in the entire nation is richer in Indian names or in fact Indian history than Pennsylvania. And whereas some of the many great nations that inhabited the territory known as Pennsylvania were and are the Lenape, Cherokee, Susquehanna, Unami, Mincy, Minkwas, forgive me if I pronounce any indigenous names incorrectly, Erie, Muskogee, Mohawk, Huron, Allegheny, Shawnee, Susquehannock, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca Indians, and the Wyandot, Chippewa, Mississauga, and Ottawa Indians, as well as many others who sustained themselves in the natural environment of the Keystone State. And whereas pre-colonial Indian villages and ancient burial mounds, which were plentiful and spread in mass across the territory, now known as Pennsylvania, were destroyed or lost due to agricultural development and industrialization. And whereas McKees Rocks Mound in McKeesport is one of those ancient burial mounds in this Commonwealth that stands as a testament to the highly civilized societies of the indigenous American peoples, and is reported as one of the oldest places of human habitats, and is reported as one of the oldest places of human habitation in eastern North America. And whereas many of Pennsylvania's busiest highways, such as Route 1, Route 40, Route 30, Route 611, and Route 590, started as American Indian paths that were used for trade and hunting. American Indian paths, excuse me. And whereas American Indian culture and society have contributed to the agricultural development, medicinal discoveries, environmental preservation, commerce, governmental institutions, and structure, and many other facets of our country, state, and cities. And whereas many American Indian people live in our urban cities, including 4,000 in Philadelphia and more than 81,092 in Pennsylvania, according to the 2010 census. And whereas many of the American Indians living in our counties, cities, towns, and boroughs have gone through great adversities to maintain their cultural and ethnic identities. And whereas many Southern and Northern American Indians in the early 1800s through the 1900s were mislabeled colored, Negro, mulatto, and white, resulting in the dilution of their identities. And whereas many have persevered through trauma and tragedy to preserve culture and traditions to be beacons of light for future generations. And whereas American Indian culture and American Indians, indigenous peoples, are to be respected and honored. And whereas the Commonwealth acknowledges the importance of educating the citizens of this Commonwealth about the heritage, history, art, archaeology, and traditions of the American Indian peoples and communities in the state of Pennsylvania. And whereas American Indians continue to contribute to the culture of this Commonwealth through the ancestral preservation of their heritage, and whereas their dedicated efforts to honor their proud heritage assist in developing a deeper understanding within this Commonwealth of the vibrant and ancient customs of the indigenous peoples living in this Commonwealth today. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day notes the influences of indigenous culture throughout our history. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day commemorates the contributions and resilience of the indigenous communities and celebrates preservation of their unique cultural heritage and ethnic identities. Therefore, be it resolved that the House of Representatives congratulate and recognize the many contributions of American Indians, recognize the strong and living traditions of the first peoples to call our land home, and look forward to working with the American Indians in the future and appreciate their future contributions to our Commonwealth. And be it further resolved that the House of Representatives recognize the first Saturday in October of every year as Indigenous Peoples Day in Pennsylvania.